into an agreement that they were going to complete suicide, and from that it went where the entire family was taken with them. One of the brothers described in an Instagram post what occurred or would occur. Police have identified the family originally from Bangladesh, and they have no known relatives here in North Texas, but police did locate some family members in Florida. Neighbors told the police they were stunned by the discovery. The family was very nice and a happy family, according to one of them. The Baylor Bears won their first men's NCAA basketball title with an 86-70 win over the previously undefeated Gonzaga Bulldogs in the championship game last night in Indianapolis. And for the first time since 2019, a major league ballpark was packed with fans, almost 40,000. The Texas Rangers had their opener yesterday at the new Globe Life Park in Arlington, which opened last year without fans and marked the first sporting event that allowed full capacity seating despite still being in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And spectators returned to the Augusta National yesterday under COVID-19 safety protocols, while four-time major winner Brooks Koepka worked out less than 3 weeks after right knee surgery, hoping to compete in the 85th Masters. Despite pleas from public health officials for Americans to continue to stay close to home, people are heading to the airport at the highest rates in over a year. The top 13 busiest travel days since the pandemic began were recorded over the last 3 weeks, and there have been more than 1 million travelers in the United States every day since the 10th of March, and this comes as cases are rising again in 27 states. Many public health experts are optimistic that the fourth wave of this coronavirus that the U.S. has entered into won't be as bad as the other three, but emphasize that it will still be important to take precautions. It's time to unplug the sanitizing robots, though, and put away the bottles of Clorox that seem to line the entrances to every school, restaurant and supermarket wanting to advertise its safety protocols. While such protocols may be reassuring to an anxious populace, they are not necessary, according to a revised guidance issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Scientists at Stanford Health have uncovered a new double mutant COVID-19 variant in California. And over 16-year-olds can now sign up for COVID-19 vaccination starting today in New York, a major expansion of eligibility as the state seeks to immunize as many people as possible. Texas received more than 2.5 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine this week. The smaller pharmacies are now scheduling appointments. Of those 2.5 million doses, 146,000 were given to 65 providers in Dallas, Tarrant, Collin and Denton counties. Prosecutors in Derek Chauvin's murder trial expected to call more expert witnesses today to testify against the former Minneapolis police officer whose deadly arrest of George Floyd sparked global protests last year. And Minneapolis police chief said that former officer Derek Chauvin violated his training and the department's policies by pressing his knee onto George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes before Floyd died in custody last year. The restraint should have stopped once he stopped resisting. More than a year after Harvey Weinstein's rape convictions, his lawyers demanding a new trial, arguing in court papers that the landmark #MeToo prosecution that put him behind bars was buoyed by improper rulings from a judge who was cavalier in protecting the disgraced movie mogul's right to a fair trial. Forbes has announced their annual World Billionaires list, including a record-breaking 2,755 billionaires, with Amazon.com Inc. founder Jeff Bezos topping it for the fourth consecutive year. NASA's Ingenuity mini helicopter has survived its first night alone on the frigid surface of Mars, hailing it as a major milestone for the tiny craft as it prepares for its first flight. The ultralight aircraft was dropped on the surface on Saturday after detaching from the belly of the Perseverance rover, which touched down on the red planet on the 18th of February. Russia is staging shows of military might in orbit as its civil and commercial space sector loses its long-standing edge. And Russian President Putin signed a law allowing him to potentially hold on to power until 2036, a move that formalizes constitutional changes endorsed in a vote last year. U.S. border agents in recent months arrested 2 Yemeni men on a terror watch list in separate incidents as they crossed the border with Mexico illegally. Efforts to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal are picking up today with a meeting in Vienna between Tehran and the 5 world powers that stayed in the accord after former President Trump withdrew the United States. United States and Iran are expecting to begin these indirect nuclear talks in Vienna to step up a gear as the 5 world powers remaining in the accord meet in Vienna. The death toll from tribal violence in Sudan's Darfur region climbed to at least 50 as sporadic clashes continued. And the violence poses a challenge to efforts by Sudan's transitional government to end decades-long rebellions in areas like Darfur, where conflict often falls along ethnic lines. A skeptical president tasked Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today with forming a new government with another inconclusive election, deepening political stalemate in Israel. Prince Hamza bin Hussein, the former Crown Prince of Jordan, pledged his allegiance to King Abdullah, his half-brother, after being accused of plotting to destabilize the country and placed under house arrest. The news came after mediation, which a professional mediator and family friend described as successful. More than 1,800 inmates have escaped from a prison in Nigeria after it was attacked by gunmen. And the United Nations raised the alarm today over reports that Tanzania forcibly returned hundreds of Mozambicans fleeing jihadist raids last month. Thousands of people fled into surrounding forest when Islamic State-linked militants launched attacks on the northeastern town of Palma, ransacking buildings and beheading civilians. A fierce attack on a UN peacekeeping base in northern Mali last week killed 4 peacekeepers and at least 23 attackers and injured another 34 peacekeepers. Kosovo's 38-year-old president took office as the country's youngest head of state and one of the youngest in the world. Italy's Prime Minister on a visit today to the Libyan capital of Tripoli, his first trip abroad since taking office, lauded the North African country's efforts to curb the flow of migrants to Europe. And European countries scramble to tamp down a surge in COVID-19 cases and ramp up vaccinations, hoping to spare hospitals from becoming overwhelmed by the pandemic's latest deadly wave of infections. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said it was too soon to say whether international summer holidays can go ahead this year, a remark suggesting a planned reopening of outbound travel could be pushed back beyond the 17th of May. Everyone in the country there will be encouraged to take 2 COVID tests a week to show they are not infected. And the foreign and defense ministers of Japan and Germany are looking to hold a 2+2 dialogue online in mid-April. We do have North Korea citing the coronavirus has become the world's first country to drop out of the Tokyo Olympics, and Japan extending its own sanctions against North Korea for another 2 years as Pyongyang continues to develop its nuclear weapons without any progress in resolving the abductions of Japanese nationals. Japanese foreign minister today expressed strong concerns to his Chinese counterpart about Chinese incursions into territorial waters, the situation in Hong Kong, and the human rights situation of China's Uyghur minority. The forced encampment by the Chinese Communist Party of nearly 2 million members of minority groups in China's western Xinjiang province is perhaps the largest coerced collectivization of humanity since the Soviet Union disbanded its Gulag prison system. A Chinese carrier, meanwhile, the group exercising near Taiwan, and such drills will become regular, according to China's Navy, in a further escalation of tensions near the island that Beijing claims as its sovereign territory. China's overhaul of Hong Kong's electoral system is seen as a watershed moment by those who fear Beijing's encroaching influence on the city. You're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan. And tropical cyclone Seroja pounded Indonesia and East Timor after torrential rains triggered floods and landslides that have killed at least 113 people and left dozens more missing. A day after daily cases crossed the 1 lakh mark in India, today they added another almost 97,000 cases to its surging COVID-19 tally. More than 43 lakh vaccine doses were administered in a span of 24 hours yesterday, the highest single-day coverage till now. And hospitals in Maharashtra running short of beds, piped oxygen and a key antiviral drug as a second wave of infections has swamped India's richest state. Of the almost 15,000 COVID patients in Delhi, 8,000 are under home isolation. And Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu said he is confident that the country would prepare a detailed outline to build a new India by the year 2047, the 100th year of India's independence. Sporadic incidents of violence reported today in some areas where voting is underway in the third phase of the West Bengal Assembly elections. And Maharashtra government moved the Supreme Court, challenging the Bombay High Court order in which it ordered the CBI probe against former Home Minister Anil Deshmukh for his alleged involvement in corruption levelled by former Mumbai Police Commissioner Parambir Singh. And the Central Reserve Police Force in Mumbai received a threat mail a few days ago naming Union Home Minister Amit Shah and UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, and the security forces informed the agencies concerned. A former Indian back-channel envoy for talks with Pakistan has canvassed support for secret parleys reportedly between the two sides. It quoted Satinder Lamba, who represented former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh in the back-channel talks with Islamabad from 2005 till 14, as claiming the 2019 changes in the status of Jammu and Kashmir would not